Welcome to Rutgers Around the World, a special 6-episode series celebrating the university's international history and its connection with the global community. We bring you this program as part of our 250th anniversary celebration. Hi, I'm Bruno Ferreira.
And I'm Gabriella Millian. Rutgers maintains these relationships through its Gaia Centers. Gaia stands for Global Advancement in International Affairs.
In this episode, we'll focus on Rutgers' relationships with Africa and how these relationships yield collaborative academic exchanges.
And now with more on Rutgers' ties with the continent, here's reporter and undergraduate student Sienna Jones.
Thanks, Gabriella. Rutgers has strong academic ties with Africa and on campus. We have many Africanist scholars and African-born faculty engaged with colleagues both on the continent and back here on campus. Let's take a look.
Rutgers is a leader in the study and teaching of Africa, with over 80 Africanist scholars and hundreds of decades-long mutual connections. And, for the last 20 years, a center dedicated to the scholarly engagement in and with Africa, the Center for African Studies.
Rutgers is recognized nationally and internationally for its strength in African studies. The Center for African Studies was the site to bring that intellectual energy and ideas together.
The Center for African Studies unites Rutgers faculty and African scholars to create a place for collaborative exchange of ideas and knowledge that spans many departments and schools and ultimately universities in other countries.
I spent 20 years as part of a group of women doing this collection of 4 volumes called Women Writing Africa, so that people know the contribution and understand the difference that gender has made across the continent.
I've done extensive research in Madagascar since 1994. More recently, I've become interested in the problem of zoonotic disease. That's disease that jumps from animals to humans. And in particular, I'm focusing on a field site where rabies has become an acute problem, as well as a recent outbreak of bubonic plague.
At times, these research projects translate into top-notch courses.
2 colleagues in the history department and I won a Fulbright Hays grant to explore the internal slave routes of Ghana and Benin and create courses that gave a different sense of what those transatlantic crossings meant.
We had 2 major federal grants that helped us to strengthen African studies at Rutgers that provided support for teaching of African languages that hadn't otherwise be taught.
Twi, or Akan, is one of the languages of West Africa, and we are the only school in the U.S. that offers all 3 years of Twi.
Other times, students can visit the African continent for more hands-on learning, often alongside African students and citizens.
Learning Abroad is a hallmark program for the campus here at Rutgers Camden. We have a great course called Doing Business in South Africa. And the students take the business course during the spring, and then they travel to South Africa.
The Dean of Students here at Rutgers Newark has been taking delegations of students to Tanzania. It's just a tremendous opportunity and very exciting to see where they are when they return.
We designed a service learning program. The students spend a month working with women's organizations in Ghana.
Graduate researchers can also conduct activities with other Africanist scholars and members of their host communities.
I worked with one student whose research was focused in Madagascar. He studied the pharmaceutical industry and its efforts to find the newest and best cancer drugs.
I have a student writing a dissertation now on water pollution and governance issues in Tunisia. I also have a current student, my first student from Tanzania, graduate student, and he's doing a dissertation project on the lives of female sex workers.
And these endeavors can lead to exciting advances in global health.
We work on the genetics and biology and breeding of new crops. We look at the nutritional profiles of these plants. And then we look for new applications of plant extracts. We have programs in Ghana, Senegal, Liberia. In East Africa, for example, we could hopefully generate opportunities for them to improve the income and access and availability of foods so these malnourished populations can become healthier.
In Uganda, air quality in the capital city Kampala had been deteriorating enormously. We are about to develop low-cost a monitoring system for a few air pollution components.
Faculty and students don't always travel to Africa for study and research. Many times, African scholars and leaders come to Rutgers.
The African Studies Association is the largest and most prestigious scholarly association for the study of Africa. In the late 1990s, they put out a request for a university to host them, and because of the strength that we had in African studies, we were able to put in a successful bid to host the Secretariat.
African postcolonial studies is a multidisciplinary area, and then the method that I use is focusing on discussing with other scholars about the issue of gender, sex, sexuality, and sexual identities. Here also, I had the opportunity to discuss with scholars interested.
These collaborations don't just propel learning and research opportunities, but help to dispel misconceptions.
I was really touched by the interest of students in African studies. The most important thing for me was they had a new perception about Africa. It's not based on what they see in the media, whereby you only see Africa being depicted negatively.
We are deeply embedded in the everyday lives of the people with whom we work, and we do that in part to speak back to people who have a lot of assumptions about how people in rural Africa live. So what my work does is complicates that and says, no, actually they very much understand their situation. They actually know what they want to do. In fact, they're far more political than most of us are in the United States.
Sienna, what are some of the other partnerships that Rutgers has with Africa?
There are several. Rutgers encourages linkages with African-based students and scholars, institutions of higher learning, and non-governmental organizations.
Thank you, Sienna.
We recently sat down with Dr. Usaina Aladu, Rutgers professor and former director of the Center for African Studies at Rutgers School of Arts and Sciences, to discuss her work. Let's take a look. Dr. Aladu, thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you.
So I wanted to ask you, Dr. Aladu, what is the focus of your research?
Okay, thank you for inviting me here. The focus of my own research is I'm a linguist by training. I'm a theoretical linguist, and my area of specialization and research interest is looking at African women's agency, especially African women coming from Muslim societies in West Africa, Francophone West Africa, and also in East Africa. So my research looks at women's lives and the interplay between religion and gender and creativity in Niger Republic, in the Sahel, in West Africa, and also in Kenya, in East Africa.
So could you provide me with some examples of the work that you do in both West and East Africa?
Okay, so for instance, when we look at the question of agency through creativity, how do Muslim women write about their lives in terms of citizenship right, in terms of social issues, but in terms of also seeing themselves as change agents, catalysts for change. So very often news that we have of the Muslim world, and especially of Africa, it's always on the side of negativity, but we don't get the positive aspect. And so my work tries to look at those areas where women are contributing a great deal to positive changes, transformation, contributing to society and leadership in the home, in the public spheres, in education, in politics, in journalism, media production, in public health. How do they write the life of women and children and society in a way that empowers not only their own community, but the entire world to understand what is going on in the society through their own lenses and in dialogue with the rest of the world? That's what my research is about.
And that leads me to my next question. Could you explain about the Rutgers and UNESCO partnership and how that affects your research?
Yeah, this is very important. The UNESCO, as you know, is a world platform. It's the United Nations branch that focuses on education and culture throughout the world. So we thought that one of the great way of contributing is to use the platform of the Center for African Studies to develop a partnership with UNESCO, whereby the entire world, whether you are in Africa or in the US, in Europe, in Asia, you can check what the faculty of the Center for African Studies, we are more than 120 researchers at Rutgers University interested in Africa. Welcome to our classes. And we do capacity building in Africa. We contribute to enhancing educational resources on the Africa side. And by that way also we invite colleagues from the African continent to contribute to in developing our own dialogue through education and research right here at Rutgers. So it is very important partnership in the sense that UNESCO saw how great Rutgers is in terms of the breadth of faculty research and also students of gender and leadership. And they thought, this is a beautiful relationship we should develop so that we can come and contribute a partnership with 4 African universities. Universities in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Gambia, in Liberia, to develop a curriculum on gender and transformative leadership for African universities and civil society.
Well, thank you so much for all of your inspiring work, Dr. Alidou. Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Come to the Center for African Studies. Check our courses.
Thank you.
The Mandela Washington Fellowship is a flagship program of President Obama's Young African Leaders Initiative. The program is comprised of 2 partnerships, one between the Gaia Centers, the Center for African Studies, and the School of Social Work, and the other between the Gaia Centers, the Department of Chemistry, and the Rutgers Business School. These partnerships help us to provide up-and-coming young African leaders with academic hands-on training and networking. Here's more.
My name is Kennedy Massier.
My name is Isan Emil Ako.
I'm Khadija Issa. I'm a Mandela Washington Fellow.
I'm a Mandela Washington Fellow.
And I'm a Nelson Mandela Washington Fellow.
The Mandela Washington Fellowship Program is an opportunity for young African leaders to come and learn about U.S. methods in civic engagement, business and entrepreneurship, public administration. It's a White House initiative that President Obama would like to further the ties between the U.S. and Africa.
Our Young African Leaders Initiative is a long-term investment in all of you and in Africa and the future that we can build together.
The program is designed to help to develop a new cadre of young leaders in the sub-Saharan African region. Rutgers is honored and pleased to have these 25 fellows and to be a part of this very prestigious program.
We tend to talk about Africa as if it's one place, and then you meet these fellows from a dozen different countries, all different kinds of commitments, engagements, professions.
I'm the manager of a local radio station.
My #1 project is trauma healing and social reconciliation.
I'm a human rights lawyer.
I am currently working together with my mom to build a rehabilitation center for kids with cerebral palsy.
Originally, Rutgers was one of only 20 universities selected to host the Mandela Washington Fellows. This year, they've doubled the number, and we are now one of 40 universities. The Centers for Global Advancement and International Affairs, the Center for African Studies, and the School of Social Work are working collaboratively on this program.
In Africa now, people are not singing the same song.
Our job is to enhance the skill sets that they bring to us. They would have spent some 500 hours collectively with professional career development mentors, about 90 hours in the classroom, another 90 hours in field trips.
I'll take back with me a lot of things, including how the American people keep their history.
After this program, one of my greatest goals is to set up a community radio station.
I'm going to develop centers within the marginalized communities where they can be a source of information.
Rutgers will always have a special place in my heart.
After they leave Rutgers, they will be hosted by the President of the United States for a week-long summit.
The Mandela Washington Fellowship is really critical, I think, for the internationalization of Rutgers.
The Mandela Washington Fellowship was an excellent opportunity for us to create partnerships throughout the sub-Saharan continent.
This is not just a 6-week program. This program endures over time.
For the last 2 years, Rutgers has successfully hosted 25 Mandela Washington Fellows at its Civic Leadership Institute. In 2016, it added a second institute and is now training double the number of fellows. Joining me is Yetemgeta Fantugola, a 2016 Mandela Washington Fellow with the brand new Sustainable Business Institute. Welcome.
Thank you.
So Yetem, you're here as part of the Mandela Washington Fellows program, a part of the Sustainable Business Institute. Can you tell us about your work in Ethiopia and what brought you here?
My profession is actually energy engineering. So I got my master's in energy engineering from a French school. I did some work back in Europe, but I came back to East Africa actually, because I wanted to start my career in energy engineering. I did a transmission project in Kenya. Then I moved back to Ethiopia to take over a consultancy firm that I own, where I consult in renewable energy sector. And I also have a couple of startups dealing with solar dryers and acoustic panels.
Right. So your focus is on renewable energy.
Correct.
Why is that important?
Ethiopia has over 100 million people. Out of those 100 million people, 80% don't have access to grid electricity. And we basically, all our energy sources actually mostly in renewable energy. So if I get involved in that sector, and it's my profession, I can actually help to decrease this ratio and to make it more even.
You mentioned before about the solar food dryers. So
Correct.
can you tell us about that? What exactly are they?
So these solar food dryers, they don't require any electricity, and you can actually put food, any type of food, fruits, vegetables, and it dries it in a faster way. But it's very inexpensive machine that we develop, and we try to sell to rural communities because 30 up to 40% of food is being wasted for different reasons, lack of storage, lack of transportation, and you want to tackle that.
So how does it contribute to the community exactly?
Now, if you're in a country that has more than 80% of people living in the rural area, most of the economy is based on agriculture, you actually now give the opportunity for the rural communities to add value to the food that is supposed to be wasted, but they can actually now store these materials and then sell them. So you create new entrepreneurs within these communities, and you can actually make an impact nationwide.
So what will this program that you're doing right now help you achieve when you return back to Ethiopia and your work in East Africa?
So this program actually changed my point of view because I met 24 other amazing fellows that come from different countries from Africa. And we're trying to do something unique here. We're trying to collaborate among each other and link up with our Professor Kevin Lyons at Rutgers University, trying to create a cooperation that will be based in Newark and try to create that link between Newark, New Jersey, and 15 countries in Africa in order to create this economic link, research link, and create this business. Because Newark, it has a port, it has different businesses, it has different manufacturing capacities, and now combining 15 other minds, 15 other countries with this concept, that's what it's all about. Mandela Washington Fellowship is trying to create a link between Africa and the United States. Why not start at a small level?
Great. Thank you so much once again for coming, Yetem.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Rutgers' current international strategy is shaped around 5 focus countries: Brazil, China, India, Indonesia, and Liberia. Let's take a look at Rutgers' collaborative relationships in Liberia.
In Africa, we do have special emphasis on relations with Liberia. And that has historical roots in the fact that the president of the University of Liberia is a Rutgers professor emeritus. And we have other ties there in terms of some large-scale international development grants that we're working on.
Liberia has had a long history of civil war and just unsettled government. And so the USAID group has put a significant amount of money to try to do improvement in curriculum.
EHELD stands for Excellence in Higher Education for Liberian Development, and Rutgers was tasked to work as a lead academic institution within a much larger consortium to review and revise and upgrade the curriculum in the School of Engineering at the University of Liberia, and also within the College of Agriculture and Sustainable Development in Cuttington. So our model there was to upgrade their ability to teach, upgrade their ability to learn, upgrade the offerings in the context of Liberia. We were very pleased that both the universities in Liberia have agreed to expand the number of their faculty. The people coming in will be newly minted graduate students that have been trained either in the U.S. at Rutgers with our consortium, but with the vast majority being trained over in the Sub-Saharan Africa, Western Africa region. Their network will be to the neighboring countries, where it'll be easier to travel, easier to do a lot of exchanges.
We've had some young Liberian scientists that have come here for graduate school. We're working hard to help train young men and young women to go forward to be researchers, to provide agricultural extension, and to train the young farmers that are going to have to feed this ever-growing Liberian population.
Joining me now are Dr. Carolyn Brown, Associate Professor of History, and Dr. Renee Larrier, Professor and Chair of the Department of French. Both are faculty members here, affiliated with the Center for African Studies. Welcome, ladies.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Now, Dr. Larrier, what is the Center for African Studies?
Well, the Center for African Studies is a resource center, if you will, of faculty here at Rutgers on all the 3 campuses who work and teach about Africa. We have programming, and we're a resource center for the university and also for the community. And we actually link the university with the community here, not only in New Brunswick, but in Camden and Newark. We're about 50 faculty and another 50 who actually work and teach about Africa, who are not necessarily members of the center, but we all work together. We all partner and have programs and all different kinds of initiatives.
Now, Dr. Brown, there is a large African immigrant community here in New Jersey. So how does that correlate with the Center for African Studies?
Yes. Well, when we set up our center almost 20 years ago or so, we realized that New Jersey has 5% of its immigrant population is African, with Egyptians being the largest number. And we realized that there are certain fields that we're training students to go into, like the law, education, and health, where they'll be interacting with these communities. And so what the center does is that we make sure that there are courses that can familiarize students with the culture, with the history, and we have a department that teaches the languages, African, Middle Eastern, and South Asian languages. So that way we feel that students who come through Rutgers, and that's at all 3 campuses of Rutgers, can come out with a certain cultural literacy about the people that they're treating. Because New Jersey has, I think 15% of New Jersey's population is immigrant. And of that 15%, 5% of 15 is an African, they're from Africa.
And how does that affect the legal system?
Well, we sometimes we're asked to come to testify for asylum cases. You know, that they, for example, we had someone from the Congo, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo is the eastern part is controlled by militias. They're involved in a civil war. One of the things that's very major in that war is that the raping of women. Now, the United Nations has declared that to be a war crime. So what we can do and what we've done is we go in and we testify in some of the court cases and say that this is true, that it's important if someone is here that says that their village is being ravaged by militias, then we can document that that's the case. So we've done that, and we also do translations for people who are even interacting with the healthcare system. And we just, because we work on, some of us have been to these countries, we work in these countries, we do research on them, and so we really try to be a major resource for the state.
Well, thank you both for your important work, and thank you both for joining us today.
Okay, sure.
There are times when we teach, and there are times when we learn. Here's reporter and undergraduate student Tara Reed on how Rutgers students are picking up valuable lessons in Africa.
Thanks, Gabriella. Africa offers comprehensive learning opportunities to Rutgers students abroad. Those opportunities come in many forms. Here's more. Rutgers offers study abroad programs to Africa each year, and students participate for many reasons. Some go to develop their skills in a foreign language or an area of study, while others work closely with communities in countries like Senegal, Ghana, and South Africa.
I look forward to working with the Xhosa community, which is one of the tribal groups in South Africa. So I'll be working with them and the idea of giving back, hopefully through the aspect of education.
Rutgers Newark offers an international leadership exchange program to Tanzania to help students give back while gaining critical leadership skills.
Through this program of service-based projects and cultural immersion, I was able to participate in programs where we planted dozens of trees with the school children. I was able to help install a sustainable solar panel. We were able to interact and collaborate with African Indigenous people called the Maasai.
It's not just for undergraduates. A USAID fellowship called the Innovation Alliance for Social Enterprise Development gives graduate students across Rutgers the chance to conduct research abroad in places like Cape Town, South Africa.
Cape Town, South Africa was life-changing for me. The research that I did while I was in Cape Town was for STEM education.
I focused on sanitation post-apartheid.
At Rutgers Camden, students from the law school, arts and sciences, business and nursing can participate in an annual learning abroad visit to South Africa, now in its 21st year.
We visit Robben Island, where Nelson Mandela was held prisoner, together. We visit a township where we have adopted an elementary school. We do that together. But then law school meets with law schools and NGOs, nursing does hospitals, business meets with large and small businesses. And then last year we had journalism, and they met with a lot of the news outlets in South Africa.
For some students, the visit to Africa turns into a journey of self-discovery.
We went to a mental hospital in Dakar, and every day they had art sessions, and it was so holistic and so beautiful. And we met with singers and rappers who use their voice as a way to express the concerns within the community. That was really inspiring. It's something that I personally wanted to bring back, with me.
Over the years, I think we've had an impact on the people of South Africa, but obviously they've had a bigger impact on us.
And for many, it is the start for what will hopefully be a lifetime of work.
It actually changed my whole perspective on public health, what I study. You cannot improve somebody's health until you improve their environment. So my work in Cape Town, South Africa is, I have decided is going to be my life work.
What I've learned now, I'm applying my daily life of building a nonprofit. So for me, it confirmed a dream that I once had as a kid, where I believe that I can really change this world.
Joining us now is Dr. Edward Ramsamy, Chair of the Department of Africana Studies. Dr. Ramsamy, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Can you please describe what the students learn in the Africana Studies Department?
Yes. Many students come to Rutgers not knowing anything about the field of Africana Studies. And however, when they take our courses, they really get engaged and enjoy it. Africana Studies can be thought of as a comparative study, interdisciplinary comparative study of peoples of Africa and the African diaspora. So there's a focus on the word diaspora in our courses. And the term diaspora, sort of as a colleague of mine, Kim Butler, Professor Kim Butler mentions, encompasses three concepts. It encompasses the concept of home, Africa, to travel, why people leave Africa, and thirdly, the politics of resettlement and how they negotiate a space and a place in a new cultural environment. Now, as you know, during the modern era, from about the late 1500s to the 1880s, the greatest forced migration in history occurred, i.e. slavery. And so that is an important constituent of our focus in Africana Studies. Why did people leave Africa? What were the implications of that for the African continent? The politics of resettlement. The largest black population in the Americas is not in the United States, it's actually in Brazil. So we have a focus on the African population in Brazil, the politics of race in the United States, the Caribbean, and what have been some of the intersections and cross currents in different parts of the African world, particularly how is Africans related to African Americans and how is African Americans connected back to Africa. So those are the sort of key ingredients of our courses, sort of a focus on Africa. And what we try to do is to sort of correct some of the dominant myths and stereotypes on Africa, which unfortunately, even in 2016, still prevail. Whenever I teach a course on Africa, I give students a blank map of Africa and ask them to identify countries in Africa, and you'll be shocked at the results. So we sort of want to introduce students to the complexities of the African continent. It's a huge continent with a great degree of linguistic, cultural, and political diversity. We talk about race relations in the US. Why is the color line such a pervasive force in American history and politics? And also look at other parts of the African diaspora, the Caribbean and Brazil, and increasingly in Europe as well. So that constitutes a sort of major intellectual focus of Africana studies.
Dr. Ramsamy, you mentioned the moving in and out of Africa. You grew up in South Africa, correct? And
Yes.
so what made you want to pursue research in Africana studies?
Yes, well, I'm a third-generation South African. What many people don't realize is that South Africa used to have, until very recently, the largest Indian diaspora outside of India. There were more than 1 million Indians in South Africa. I think the US and the UK may have surpassed that number now. But South Africa was, the last country in the world that had official segregation. And there are a number of striking parallels between South Africa and the United States, although they're in two different parts of the world, in two different hemispheres. For example, the river that separates New Jersey and New York is called the Hudson River. Well, the Hudson River is named after Henry Hudson, who was an explorer for the Dutch East India Company. Well, around the same time Henry Hudson was exploring the east coast of the US, the same company, the Dutch East India Company, sent Jan van Riebeeck in 1652 to establish a halfway station for ships in South Africa. So the comparative history goes way back. Furthermore, you can't understand the dynamics of how racism operated without having a comparative view of South Africa and the United States, and also resistance against segregation. There was a lot of cross-communication and cross-fertilization between these two countries. So I'm interested in that sort of comparative history, and part of my research deals with that.
It's very fascinating history. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
That concludes this episode of our program.
Please join us next time for another look at Rutgers Around the World, where we'll explore relationships in Europe and in the Middle East. I'm Bruno Ferreira.
And I'm Gabriela Milian. Thanks for watching.